Hi, Mike Burnley, auctioneer, discussing auctioneers and the multiple listing service. Here forward, we'll just say MLS. And that is a national database of largely residential, but also commercial, industrial, commercial, bare land, farm, what have you, that is accessed by being a realtor. So if we got a real estate licensee somewhere here in the United States and they pay that, I think in my market it's about $1,000 or maybe a little more a year, you're members of the National Association of Realtors. You're a member of your state realtor organization. You're probably members of your local realtor organization, and you have access to MLS. That would be the simple overview of how people engaged in real estate practice access the MLS. They pay dues, and they pay a substantial amount in some markets to be a member. It's complicated further because a lot of these databases of real property are isolated or small. And so if I do business in, say, a 2 or 3 state area, or all across one state or more, I may have to be a member of multiple local MLS/local realtor organizations to practice in those various markets. The MLSs aren't terribly synchronized. And why aren't they? Because, hey, this local realtor organization wants the money, the dues. You want to work in this one? Well, you got to pay dues. You got to pay money. It's all about money. So some auctioneers are not realtors. I think in my state with less than 3,000 licensees, auctioneer licensees, I would think around half, maybe a little less, are real estate licensees in some form. We have a salesperson broker relationship in my state. That's not unusual. That's not necessarily every state, but most states have that kind of broker who brings in salespeople and manages them and can also engage in real estate practice. So we're focusing on the MLS. And the MLS is that database. And if I have to pay to access it and pay to search it and pay to put property in there, and secondly, if I don't put it in right, or I make a mistake in the listing, or I don't get it in there soon enough, I get fined by the MLS. Auctioneers have for a while now been looking for alternatives. Well, I've got good news. There's a whole bunch of alternatives, and you don't probably need MLS anymore. There's Zillow and Trulia and ListHub and Homes and Realtor.com and My State MLS, which is a syndicated nationwide database. It doesn't require you to pay $1,000 a year. I can put a sign in the yard. I can send out postcards. I can have open houses. I can put it on Facebook, LinkedIn. I can tweet out about the upcoming real estate auction, right? Do I need MLS? In most markets, I, as an auctioneer, probably do not, because there's far cheaper and probably better ways to advertise that property. We have seen in my market, and I've sold property in Ohio and Indiana, real property, seen very little reaction from the realtor community. We'll have our last real estate auction. I think we had 19 registered bidders and probably 2 or 3 registered with an agent. 16, 17 were representing themselves. Typically, buyers feel empowered these days. They don't feel like they need an agent until they maybe narrow it down, or they're ready to make an offer and need help with terms, conditions, contracts, things like that. Well, at auction, you don't need any help with the terms or the contract or anything to some extent, because the terms are set. The contract's prescribed. Here's the contract we're going to use. You get a chance to look at it ahead of time. You could have your attorney look at it. In fact, you could have your attorney look at it and probably save money over using an agent. Now, agents don't cost the buyer typically, although some buyer agents do charge. Typically, that's a co-op or a commission coming from the seller. And so some sellers say, well, gee, if I didn't have to pay this cooperative fee, then I could probably get my property listed for less. Could I list as a real estate licensee, real estate broker? Could I list property for less if I didn't have to co-op? And the answer is yes, resoundingly yes. There are lawsuits underway against NAR for price fixing, collusion, causing an inflation by double the amount of commission sellers have to pay. Sellers only have to pay, as an example here, a seller only has to pay 6% because I have to charge 6% because I have to pay my fellow agent 3%, leaving me 3%. If I didn't have to pay them 3%, I could list your property for 3%. But I don't. Well, I can't because I need that other 3% to co-op with. Cost sellers more money. Those are the major issues with those lawsuits that NAR is fighting at the moment. So, auctioneers, I'm going to give you permission not to use the MLS. I'm going to give you permission not to be a realtor if you don't want to be, because you can opt out and find a broker. If you're not a broker, you're not depending on your state, whether you need to be a broker or a salesperson can opt out or what have you. But if you can opt out and not be a realtor, you can still be a real estate licensee, and you can use a lot of services such as My State MLS or Zillow or True Your Homes or Realtor or List Hub or what have you, or Facebook or signs or postcards, and get the job done, and probably get the job done just as well, if not better. So is MLS, what's the future of MLS for auctioneers? I would think not bright in terms of a ongoing relationship. I think for the most part, auctioneers, there's a good number of auctioneers that aren't realtors at this point. When I say realtors, meaning they're a member of the realtor community, pay those dues. I think there's quite a few auctioneers that aren't realtors at the moment. And I would predict that fewer and fewer auctioneers are going to continue to pay those dues when there are so many other equally good, if not better, ways to advertise property and find property other than the antiquated MLS. So, auctioneers, if you haven't looked into some alternatives to MLS, or if you haven't actually gone right down to the details here and said, what's the advantages, what's the disadvantages, what's the granular here, what am I getting for that, say, $1,000 a year? What's the benefit? And if you're not seeing the benefit, well, I'm giving you permission to analyze that. Mike Brantley, Auctioneer. Pleasure to be with you today. Other videos on this same page, others forthcoming. Have a great day and stay safe.